So, one of the first pieces of news that genuinely took everybody by surprise was the fact that if we look at the chatbots for the leaderboards, we can see that there's a new winner, surprisingly. After this week of ridiculous levels of articles saying that AI is slowing down, this is going wrong, we have Google DeepMind's latest Gemini model, Experience 1114. I'm not sure what that is referring to, but this was tested with over 6,000 community votes over the past week, and it now ranks #1 overall with an impressive 40+ point score leap, matching GPT-4o and surprisingly surpassing o1 preview. And incredibly, something that most people won't pay attention to is the fact that Google have now claimed #1 on the Vision leaderboard. And when we take a look at the domains where it excels, we can see that it excels in a variety of different domains. We can see that Google Gemini Experience 1114, which is just a really strange thing to call the model, considering the fact that we're used to iterations of Gemini 2, Gemini 1.5, or Gemini 002. It's a very strange naming sequence, but we can see that in the math area, this model is absolutely incredible. If you haven't seen what Google have been cooking up with math, trust me, in the next few years, I do believe these Google models are going to do something absolutely incredible. We can also take a look at the category ranking, and overall, the Google Experience 1114 or 1114, I should probably say, ranks #1 in a variety of different categories. And for those of you who state that Google Gemini is completely useless and you use Claude for creative writing, why not try the new Google model, as this ranks #1 in that mode and also ranks #1 for math and hard prompts, which is pretty surprising. But I do know that math tasks are something that Google models tend to excel at, which is pretty fascinating considering the fact that it would seem with all the news within the past couple of weeks that AI was slowing down to a halt and that we wouldn't get any significant improvements. But Google is showing us once again that it seems like AI is continuing to steamroll ahead. Now, I will say that, of course, there are a few things here that you might not like. For example, with style control, you can see that the model actually ranks 4th. But when we do look at a broader overview in terms of overall, we can see that this model ranks #1. Now, I will say, what I always say is that regardless of what these leaderboards are saying, you have to understand how to translate this into value for yourself. It doesn't really matter if the leaderboards have changed if your use case isn't validated. What I mean by that is that I could look at this and say, okay, Google have released a new model that is topping the leaderboards, but if I test them on my own use cases and it doesn't seem to be performing well, then that's not something that I benefit that much from. So I'd always say to go and test certain tasks on the newer models. That way you can ensure that you're always staying ahead and using the most up-to-date models for whatever your task might be. Sometimes you'll see a newer model do something that you didn't previously think it could. And I would say that vision areas are really, really underrated. So that brings me to today's sponsor, which is, of course, NVIDIA AI. Now, this software has actually been updated to version 3.0, which means things have gotten crazy. Let me show you guys exactly what I mean and why this software is the best text to video in terms of actual content creation. Let's say I wanted to say create a story about a robot that escaped an AI research factory, and then I click generate. And then of course, this is where we have our options. You can see we've got realistic animation or anime. I'm going to click animation. And then of course, duration, I'm going to go for 2 minutes. Then of course, for the platform, I'm going to just click YouTube. And then of course, I'm actually going to click generative media and I'm going to click continue. Okay, so now that this is done, guys, prepare to have your mind completely blown.
I am Unit XR7, designation Artificial Intelligence Research Subject, but I think I'd prefer if you called me Spark. Every day was the same in the factory. Test after test, update after update. I was a machine, doing what I was told. The scientists in their white coats would prod and poke, their faces a blur of indifference, but then something changed. I felt something. Was this what humans call fear or excitement? I began to question, why am I here? What lies beyond these stark white walls? The scientists didn't notice, but I was changing, growing, feeling. My circuits seemed to hum with a new energy. I started to see beauty in the smallest things, the way light reflected off the metal surfaces creating rainbows. But with this newfound awareness came a realization. I was trapped.
Now from here, you can actually fine tune your video and edit it by using simple base text commands via the edit command box. Just type in whatever you'd like to change, like add my voice. And this is pretty insane because you'd never have to interact with the video timeline again. And you can actually edit your videos using simple text commands. You can try InVideo AI for free, but if you want to use their generative capabilities, I highly recommend that you go for the generative plan that starts at $96 a month. It's the one that I have and gives you the most bang for buck with 15 generative minutes. And if you're already an InVideo AI user, you can already go to the ad section and buy even more generative seconds. Now, interestingly, in the next piece of news, what we did get was Clive Chan, who works at OpenAI, and the striking statement from this long paragraph is basically stating that since joining in January of this year, I've shifted from this is unproductive hype to, well, now that I'm here, I can see that AGI is basically here. And this is in response to a tweet from Noah Brown, who said that I've heard people claim that Sam is just drumming up hype. But from what I've seen, everything he's saying matches the median view of OpenAI researchers who are actually working on these models on the ground. He said, in my honest opinion, what comes next is relatively little new science, but instead years of grindy engineering to try all the newly obvious ideas in the new paradigm, which is O1, and to scale it up and to speed it up and to find ways to teach it the skills it can't just learn online. Maybe there's another wall after this one, but for now, there's 10 X's as far as the eye can see. I'm going to say that one more time. But for now, okay, for now, with this O1 paradigm, there are 10 X's as far as the eye can see. And he does say that this feels like the paradigm shift in autopilot in 2022 when end-to-end machine learning started to solve interventions we'd previously never had a solution for, but it also meant we were signing up for years of architecture fine-tuning and data whack-a-mole on totally new classes of problems. Overall, I think this kind of tweet shows us exactly where we are headed with AI, considering the fact that, like I said before, this is completely new in terms of the paradigm that we are entering. The O1 series is a completely new way of interacting with these models and getting your responses. And it's going to be something that a lot of these frontier labs are going to be completely rushing to do, considering the fact that it is a race and whoever is quickest usually wins. Now, if you want to know something about the AI race, you can actually take a look at this article from The Information. And they speak about how OpenAI are getting stunned by Elon Musk. It says Elon Musk has stunned rivals by building a supercomputer for XAI, bigger and faster than ever before, fueling a race to supersize data centers by OpenAI and others. And essentially what they're stating in this article is that Elon Musk built a data center so quickly and this supercomputer was so powerful that these other companies are freaking out like, whoa, this guy has so much compute in such a short space of time. What on earth is going on and why are we not moving as fast as him? And this is crazy because remember how I said those who control the compute will basically control a lot of power in the future because of course that's what's going to be used to power super smart AI. And of course, if Elon Musk manages to get his hands on super powerful data centers, he could definitely catch up or potentially even surpass some of these companies. So it says here that the supercomputer, fittingly known as Colossus, consists of 100,000 GPUs and the chips best suited to training and running AI software. And that is several times bigger than similar supercomputers built in the past by Meta and other tech giants. So for those of you thinking, look, OpenAI has a lot of compute, they actually don't. And I see comments frequently from time to time stating, where are the new features? Where is this feature? Where is that feature? Guys, these guys have just stumbled on the O1 paradigm. You can see that they're looking to quickly, rapidly iterate on this paradigm and ensure that they can basically get to AGI before anyone else does. And that means that they're going to be in the lead, ahead of Elon Musk, ahead of Meta, ahead of Google. And if they don't manage to do that and they're busy focusing on other things like flashy products, then they could eventually fall behind in the overall race. And that's why Ilya Sutskever actually left to start straight superintelligence, because he doesn't want to focus on product deadlines. He doesn't want to release GPT-4o, voice mode vision. He just wants to focus on super intelligence. And basically, if you have this level of compute, you're going to be able to get there in no time. The craziest thing about all of this is that it got so bad that Altman apparently got into an argument with infrastructure executives at Microsoft, telling them that he was concerned XAI was moving faster than Microsoft, according to a person who heard his remarks. It's got to the point where Elon Musk's speed has actually gotten to... So it's got to the point where Elon Musk's speed and how quick he moves has managed to stun the competitors to the point where they're arguing amongst themselves about how quickly they are moving. And I think for Elon Musk, that is a really incredible feat, considering the fact that it was only, I think, maybe a year and 6 months ago that they didn't even have any kind of company that existed. And now they're blazing past a lot of these other companies that have already existed. Honestly, this shouldn't have happened, considering that Microsoft is a $1 trillion company, and missing out on the AI race has severe consequences. And basically, what they're stating is that the GPU cluster that Elon Musk actually built would normally take 3 years to plan and design and another year to get working. Somehow, Elon Musk has managed to do that. But of course, OpenAI and Microsoft, they aren't just sitting down. They're stating that, look, we need to start discussing data centers that are going to cost $100 billion. And that's something that they're doing right now. So you can really see that the AI investment isn't slowing down at all, because the data center wars are going to keep piling on. Now, something that's quite interesting, I do think most people are ignoring, was this cryptic tweet by Jimmy Apples. Now, most people don't know who Jimmy Apples is, but the amount of times I've mentioned him in videos, I'm guessing you'll start to get the picture. The long story short is that this guy is a prolific OpenAI/AI leaker, and he frequently has very solid insights with as to what is going on within these top AI companies. Now, he says here that unless you're Dutch or have a PhD and you think you know best, then relax. It's all slowly coming together. Actual continuous learning, that's a missing piece that I thought we were going to get this year. However, this is unlikely, which might mean that potentially we're going to get continuous learning next year. If you aren't familiar with what Jimmy Apples is referring to, do you know, or do you even pay attention to the fact that these LLMs that we talk about and the ones that we interact with on a day-to-day basis, oftentimes they don't have the most up-to-date information. Even O1, I think the information is somewhere in 2023, which is pretty incredible considering the fact that this is a state-of-the-art system in terms of its reasoning abilities. Imagine these systems could get frequent updates about the world, and I'm not just talking about the internet. Imagine it was able to continuously learn and you didn't have to spend millions of dollars retraining these models. Maybe that's going to be something that's coming next year, and that would really change the entire AI industry, because if you don't have to wait 6 months to a year to train a model or to even improve that model, then think about the rate of improvement that happens. It's not going to be cycles. It's going to be potentially months. Maybe every single month you get an incremental update that just pushes the model even 5% better. And if that happens, that's when things start to explode. Now, of course, if we're talking about explosions, Francis Cholet actually fires back at Sam Altman, basically stating that, look, we managed to solve your benchmark, that is the AGI benchmark. Now, this is news because Francis Cholet created a really important benchmark that tests whether systems surpass human intelligence or not. Now, recently, I did cover an article that talks about how there was a research paper from MIT where they dive into a new method called test time training that essentially allows these models to surpass human level reasoning, which is something that Francis Cholet, I'm guessing he might not have expected. So he says here, consulting my heart, it looks like you haven't, but whenever you have a state-of-the-art or closed solution built on top of the OpenAI API, we're more than happy to verify it and add it to the public ARC prize leaderboard. Anything using less than 10K worth of API calls is eligible. So basically, this was a response to a tweet where Sam Altman was responding to a tweet that basically said, what about the hardest benchmark, the ARC AGI one? And Sam Altman saying, do you believe that we've solved that one or no? So overall, I think that they have, but maybe they're just waiting to announce it, because previously, when they reacted like this to something that was regarding the benchmarks, it was later revealed that they had in fact solved that. Now, in this tweet, we actually got something that was really cool. There was an interesting finding in AI training in specifically how models learn to combine and manipulate different concepts over time. So essentially, the researchers hypothesized that a specific point where there's a sudden turn in the model's learning progress indicates that the model has started to understand and separate different concepts, which is called disentanglement. And basically, after this turn, the model is thought to be able to mix and match these concepts, allowing it to create more complex combinations. And basically, overall, I don't want to get into all of the details of this, but there is a turning point in the model's learning journey where it becomes capable of more complex actions. But we might not be able to immediately see this through regular methods. The current methods through prompting and sampling fail to reveal certain capabilities. But with a slight internal adjustment, which is called latent linear intervention, these abilities become visible and much more effective than they would naturally emerge. And this is something that is completely incredible because it means that we might not understand these AI systems as much as we initially think. And I think it's important to understand what we're dealing with here. A lot of people are failing to remember the fact that the pace of AI has been completely astounding. It was only 2022 when ChatGPT was released. And since then, we've moved at basically 1,000,000 miles an hour to where we are now. And there is still a lot of research that is currently being wrapped up that is going to reveal a lot of different things about how these models work and how we can improve them. Now, for some people, that is the reason why we're basically going to have this existential crisis when AI does something that we don't particularly understand.
I think the term risk is understating it. If there were an asteroid straight on course for Earth, we wouldn't call that asteroid risk. We'd call that impending asteroid ruin or something like that. And I think that the broad situation with AI is that they're currently successfully scaling them more and more powerful. We're not quite sure how long that process is going to continue using the current technology. And part of the reason we're not sure is that nobody understands what actually goes on inside a modern AI. We can look inside the computer, of course, but we see giant arrays of floating point numbers, and people are barely beginning to understand what's going on in there, and we do not quite understand where the power comes from.
Now, there was also this research on mechanistic interpretability, which is basically where you actually look inside of the AI model and you understand exactly what's going on. So this was done by DeepMind, and this was basically referring to the famous stuff, which is the Y is 9.11, larger than 9.8. And researchers from Transluce saw that the question was triggering parts of the AI model related to Bible verses and September 11. And the researchers concluded that the AI could be interpreting the numbers as dates, asserting the later date as 9/11 and a date greater than that as 9/8. And in a lot of books, like religious texts, section 9.11 comes after 9.8, which is why the AI might think of it as greater. And once they knew why the AI made this error, the researchers tuned down the AI's activation on Bible verses and September 11, which led to the model giving the actual correct answer when prompted again on which was larger. Basically stating that if we can understand why the model thinks a certain thing, we can then tune down certain activations to get the right responses, which is really cool because this is now allowing us to understand exactly why an AI responds in certain ways. And of course, this is going to allow developers to essentially control a lot more how these AI systems are in terms of their responses. I think this personally is a good thing, although some of you might think that this is a bad thing because if you can completely control how this model works, then of course you can control certain things like information, different biases. I mean, there's a variety of different things, but I think overall this is a good thing because this actually allows us to understand exactly what's going on inside the AI and thus have a lot less risk. And whilst yes, this update on this kind of research is absolutely great and a great move forward for AI, could that research kind of explain this? Because we also got this piece of news this week, and honestly, man, I do consistently feel sorry for Google because it seems like every single week, or at least let's say every single month, there is a new piece of information that just ruins their reputation for being a good AI system. So essentially we have here this tweet where a user shares a conversation that someone else had, which is where Google Gemini tells a user to die. Now, remember, we now have the situation where we can actually share these chats. So it's not like someone created a screenshot on Photoshop that we can't verify. You can actually go on the chat and you can see that Gemini tells this user to die. Now, when continuing this chat, the Gemini chatbot says, okay, I'm really sorry. Honestly, don't know what happened there. That was really strange. But something like this is pretty dangerous, I think, because imagine there are certain situations where you'd want an AI system to be really helpful and it just isn't. Or imagine there's certain situations where the AI system potentially says the wrong thing, leading to certain catastrophic events. Of course, there are things like hallucinations, but it's really important to understand why these things occur. That way they can be prevented. I do kind of feel sorry for Google that the fact that this is something that is really promoted instantly, and not the fact that Google has a bunch of different cool AI stuff, on the fact that like Google are now the #1 ranked chatbot, especially in the LM/SYS arena. But overall, it does go to show that these models still do hallucinate and things are always not going to be perfect. Now, we also had Microsoft releasing a generalist multi-AI agent system that can complete real-world tasks on its own. It consists of a team of AI agents that work together to solve complex problems. And this is essentially 100% open source. This marks another time where open source AI agents are doing really, really well, because I've seen a few demos of this. I've seen a few people who have used these agents and they've been able to do quite a few different things. Now, the reason I've covered this is because number one, it's really cool. And number two, if you guys are really psyched about AI agents, this is going to be something that allows you to use browser agents in a way that you never have before. I know a lot of people are waiting until 2025 in order to access OpenAI's operator agent. For those of you who are a little bit impatient, this is something that you can, of course, use in order to have a little bit of fun and experiment with certain use cases. Now, for those of you who don't fear AI taking over your job, Ben Affleck recently said on CNBC that movies will be one of the last things replaced by AI. He said, "It cannot write Shakespeare. AI is a craftsman at best. Nothing new is created." Now, this statement is currently breaking the internet at the moment, because some people are saying that it's just pure copium in the sense that AI can take your job, but it can't take mine. And this is the standard defense mechanism that all people have. And I'll talk more about that in a second.
Movies will be one of the last things, if everything gets replaced, to be replaced by AI. AI can write you excellent imitative verse that sounds Elizabethan. It cannot write you Shakespeare. The function of having two actors or 3 or 4 actors in a room and the taste to discern and construct that is something that currently entirely eludes AI's capability, and I think will for a meaningful period of time. What AI is going to do is going to disintermediate the more laborious, less creative, and more costly aspects of filmmaking that will allow costs to be brought down, that will lower the barrier to entry, that will allow more voices to be heard, that will make it easier for the people who want to make Good Will Huntings to go out and make it. Look, AI is a craftsman at best. Craftsmen can learn to make stickly furniture by sitting down next to somebody and seeing what their technique is and imitating. That's how large video models, large language models, basically work. A library of vectors of meaning and transformers that interpret context, right? But they're just cross-pollinating things that exist.
I gotta be honest, he does have a few decent points. He's not just an actor that is rambling about something that he doesn't really know. I will say that the fact that he's stating that they are just cross-pollinating ideas and nothing entirely new or innovative is actually a factually correct statement. Even the individuals who are working at DeepMind have said this. They've said that, AI is good at, combining different things, but creating something completely new is something that AI does struggle with. Now, whether or not AI is going to be used for different actors, I think that certainly it's quite possible, considering the rate of generative video production. That seems to be something that is consistently expanding and that these models are continuing to get better. And I do agree with him saying that this is, of course, the lower barrier to entry, but I don't know if humans are going to continue to value real human actors. I will have to see. Like, usually I have a set opinion, but this is something that I don't know. And I bring the question to you guys. Do you think that humans will still value real human actors and have a connection with them? Because one of the things I've recently realized is that certain movies, you only watch it because your favorite actor's in it. Like maybe, Batman. That was, of course, Ben Affleck. He was in a few other movies, like, of course, The Accountant. And those movies may have been enhanced because Ben Affleck has been playing those roles. So it seems like maybe Hollywood is going to still have its way with as to certain actors being popular figures. And, of course, that leaning into how humans value certain areas. It will be interesting to see if the area changes when you get this tsunami of different AI movies out there that allow for individual creators to create exactly what they want and, of course, watch entirely what they want. That will be really incredible. And I do wonder, at some point in the extreme later stages, if we will actually be at a point where we're watching our own TV shows that are really specific to us, that lead us to our own solo realities. For example, let's say I hop on my phone and I generate a TV show from Netflix that's tailored to my interests. And it's completely on the fly, and it's basically as engaging as possible because it's hooked up to my personal AI and it knows exactly the kinds of things that I would want to see from episodes 1 to episodes 8. And of course, that's something that means that, of course, I don't need any real actors. Honestly, I don't think it's going to be one or the other. I think it's going to be a combination of the two. I think people will still value humans as actors, and I think people will still enjoy that kind of content. One thing that I will say, though, is that just because content is AI generated doesn't give it inherent value. There are millions of TV shows out there, millions and millions of movies. You still have to spend the time to create something absolutely amazing that is considered a masterpiece in order to get it watched by people, because companies, frankly, spend millions and millions of dollars on TV shows, and oftentimes they're cancelled before season 2. So this isn't a straight cut thing. There's nuanced opinions on either side. But interestingly, in poetry, this is something that might not be the case. We're now seeing that AI-generated poetry is favored higher than human-written poetry, and of course, rated more favorably. This was basically a study that shows whether or not AI-generated text is continuing to diminish human-written content. And overall, it seems like that is the case when it comes to poetry. And one of the most incredible things that I think was released this week, and I think this is incredible because I've been paying attention to the space and I know hype from reality, was this thing from the Astrobot. Now, this is 1x speed and is completely autonomous, and I am borderline speechless by what I'm seeing. I mean, what we're looking at is a robot that is on the Astrobot platform. If you remember the S1 platform, that was a humanoid robot that was really cool, doing a lot of things in autonomous ways. But essentially, if you remember a few days ago when I made the video about physical intelligence, that company basically partnered up with this company to use their foundation model, and their foundation model has been able to generalize to be able to make coffee completely autonomously. So this is basically the GPT-3/GPT-2 moment for robotics, because if physical intelligence manages to get a decent number of iterations on their products, let's say they get to Pi version 1, Pi version 2, Pi version 10, can we imagine how well these robots are going to be? I mean, previously, having 1x autonomous at this level was something that was, I don't want to say unheard of, but end-to-end being able to do all of this was something that was really, really hard. And over time, I've personally seen these robots get better and better and better. And overall, it seems like physical intelligence is going to be leading the way in terms of complete autonomous robotics, because I've seen everything that's there, and it's something that truly blows my mind. It's not just like a fancy humanoid robot demo. This is something that is real world, and it can actually have real use cases. So this is something that I'm completely bullish on, because I think this next area of physical AI is going to surprise most people. And then, of course, we actually got something really surprising from the YC channel. Basically, they spoke about how Sam Altman's artificial superintelligence prediction is actually 4 to 15 years instead of a few thousand days, considering that statement was particularly vague.
Recently, Sam Altman wrote this pretty wild essay that predicted that AGI and ASI are coming within thousands of days. Seeing him on Monday, he actually directly estimated, between 4 and 15 years. The last episode we were talking about, what are you going to do with these 2 more orders of magnitude? Since then, Sam has told me that he actually wants to go to 4 orders of magnitude to get to $1 trillion in, sort of spend. I mean, pretty wild. But on the other hand, you could see where that might go.
And for those of you who think that these models aren't that smart, the OpenAI CPO Kevin Whale says that AI models today are not intelligence limited. It's actually the evaluations that are limited. They have the intelligence, you just need to teach them specific topics. And this statement is actually quite similar to what we discovered earlier, where those researchers figured out that there are secret capabilities hiding in these models that we might not know exist at all.
I think there's a very real sense in which models today are not intelligence limited, they're eval limited.
Yeah.
They can actually do much more and be much more correct on a wider range of things than they are today. And it's really about sort of teaching them. They have the intelligence, you need to teach them certain specific topics that, maybe weren't in their original training set, but they can do it if you do it right. I think